Here on the little planet today, it's mainly about the garden and everything that's connected with it. And I'm glad that you have landed here today. Let me take you on a little tour, and also let me tell you a little bit about how things are here right now, and what has changed or may continue to change. Since I've expanded the vegetable garden a bit, I urgently needed another raised bed and was very happy that Martin helped me to build it. You have to know that I'm not unskilled with my hands, but if there's one thing I'm not good at all, it's using a cordless screwdriver. I love to use it, but afterwards at least 2 bits are completely worn out and useless. For whatever reason, I just don't seem to have the talent for it. So it's all the better that Martin took over this time, for which I'm really grateful. I hope to keep the voles from raiding us with the wire netting. I need the new raised bed for the zucchini plants that were still waiting in the greenhouse to finally get outdoors. I will try something new and let them grow vertically, that is, in the air. Let's see if this works out as I imagine. Now that it's finally warmer, the vegetable plants have gotten a growth spurt. At least all the ones that have survived all the slugs so far that have been populating the garden this year. Right now, we're already eating the radishes, at least the ones where the slugs didn't outrun us. By the way, we also eat the leaves. If you haven't done so yet, here's my tip. Wash and dry the leaves, put some olive oil and salt on them, and then put them in the oven at 180 degrees until they are cross. It's so delicious, I tell you. It's just been damp too many times this year. Well, and the slug control for me consists of taking them to a compost that I don't use for the beds later, always hoping they stay there, because who likes to leave paradise? I always just take them away and just can't kill them. Yes, I don't want to. Maybe it would be different if we had to live exclusively on these vegetables. I don't know. For a couple of years, I've been trying to make a little oasis out of our garden. And lately, I've been venturing the first small steps toward permaculture. At the moment, I'm reading again more often in one of my favorite garden books. It's called The Living Garden, and there the moon phases are included in gardening. Yes, that's exactly it. I want a living garden with a diversity of species, and by that I mean plants and animals. I know that I also need patience for this. It really doesn't happen overnight, and I am constantly learning. Here you can see my potato tower, in which the potatoes grow in different layers on top of each other. This is also great for those of you who may not have a garden, but who have a balcony. Just look how many butterflies! Especially lots of foxtails this year. In any case, things have already changed here in the garden. Meanwhile, we have a variety of insects in the garden, and thus also more and more birds. There are sparrows, tides, chaffinches, robins, blackbirds, starlings, magpies, and also a fat, somewhat dissolved jay now live here. Oh, and recently, a red hawk has been resting on one of the roof beams. Our neighbor Fanny told me that in the evenings he waits up on the roof for the bats that live there under the wooden panels to fly out. To be honest, I'm glad that the bats have probably always been faster so far. For me, biodiversity also means that some of my ideas about what a garden should look like have been allowed to change in recent years. For example, if I want to give insects as much habitat as possible, that also means that a shortcut lawn then becomes a thing of the past. Many plants were certainly already there before. More and more plants settle here, like the hawkweed here. Ah, there's a ladybug larva crawling here. They like to eat aphids. My understanding of what should and is allowed to grow here in our home has also fundamentally changed, and I no longer use the term weeds. Now, they are all herb friends to me. A lot of what I weeded before is allowed to stay, so also be there. Since our soil here is not the best, I created small raised beds 2 years ago and planted them with many cottage garden plants, which have now also sown themselves more and more often into the meadow. And I have to be very carefully if I use my body-operated lawnmower. I must already look very carefully and watch out that I do not mow the new small plant islands again. In late summer, I will then scythe. The time I spent mowing and weeding before, I now use for observing. And there are so many different areas in the same garden. The shade bed is so different from the raised beds, or the raised beds from the wild meadow, or the permaculture beds. These are completely different habitats. Yes, they even smell different. It's so nice to see how the foxgloves have continued to seed themselves. Free plants have now grown into a really big family of 9 or 10 plants. And as I said, some of them I didn't plant myself, but simply found after some time. Yes, and again, other plants simply didn't feel comfortable here with us and didn't become native. I was also allowed to learn that. Not every garden is the same, and the differences are often very clear. I learn that I cannot force anything here, and nature shows me again and again that I do not know much at all, and can still learn and experience. I especially like to watch the many June beetles right now, in addition to the butterflies. I love that, and can completely forget the time about it. When I observe such a small beetle very closely, I actually feel close to it, somehow even connected to it. Above all, I then always become aware of how much liveliness flows through these little creatures, and then I always want to protect them as best I can. I actually feel responsible for them, and so it's natural for me not to use any chemical products in the garden. When I started to let the garden gradually become a nature-oriented garden, I also realized that I couldn't only question my own expectations again and again. Yes, I was also allowed to deal with the expectations of others. In the beginning, I really needed courage not to trim the lawn anymore, and not to remove every weed from the flower beds, and not to think of letting the garden decay in this way. Yes, such thoughts surfaced in me. But there is also the question, how much naturalness do I allow nature in my garden? And how much naturalness can I allow myself without feeling uncomfortable? because more and more often I'm overwhelmed by the beauty and liveliness of the nature that surrounds me. When the wind moves the plants back and forth as if in a dance, and the leaves on the trees make music for me, the buzz and hum of the bees and bumblebees, the playful flutter of the butterflies, the many different bird calls at different times of the day, all the smells, the infinite colors of the plants, the many different shades of green alone, and the petals, which an artist couldn't have created better with a brush, no matter how fine. This wonderful natural space that surrounds me gives me the opportunity to let my own little works of art merge with it. Being out there in the garden connects me to all the elements. I find them, can't control them. They show me the impermanence as well as the unstoppable change and the constant change in all things, as well as in ourselves. The ever-recurring change of the seasons, the eternal coming and going, this ever-new transformation. Just like with us in the end, isn't it? Why is it that the word devotion comes to my mind right now? And joy. And gratitude. Yes, why? In any case, I will continue to keep you up to date and share my garden with you if you want. The garden that may become more and more alive. From me now, for you all the love and maybe already on soon.
Always in bloom for you. So many times I've strayed